You like my new ranch hand shirt? That's what Joey called it. Ooh, you look like a ranch hand. So, yeah, got my ranch hand shirt. Unfortunately, there's no gas for the fireplace. You know, these modern people that want a fireplace made that's just made of gas, you know. I want one made of wood. Well, mister, you can't took a pot of coffee over that fire. Hey, all right. There's Joy Blessed Life, just came into the live. Nice big log cabin lodge. Now this lodge has room for many tables. You could seat 100 people in here. There's 50 rooms, rooms that'll sleep 50 in this building, and another building that'll sleep another 50 or 60. So you can have some big meetings here. And you're just surrounded by the most beautiful golden wood. It's a beautiful place. So we're going to tell a few stories tonight, have some fun. Of course, you know, I'm trying to stick with the joy blessed life mentality. I'm a little bit, I'd be out racing a go-kart right now for entertainment, put a GoPro on my chest and all that, but this is too jiggly. Yep, it's not for our generation, you know. No. So, all right. Well, as some of you may know, I did spend 13 years in the Coast Guard. I went around the world. I was on an icebreaker, and I got to visit Antarctica, and I got to visit California and Australia, and never did go over to the Europe side, although I did get to Iceland. And Iceland, that's a really rugged place. Mostly, you know, the lava flows and the volcanoes, and it is rugged, but it's beautiful. Kind of like cornbread that's burnt on top. You know, it's just tough place, but great people there, and a great community there. You'd really like it. Good place to visit. And there's Faroe Islands are up there, and there's good people there too. As a matter of fact, I was in a place up in Greenland called Sundestrom. I've been at Reykjavik and Keflavik and Vikavik and Vakavak and all those names up there, and Thule, Greenland. Now, Thule, Greenland was one of those places that had like a Nike site. It was early warning radar back in the Cold War days, and there's a Navy base up there and a construction battalion and different things like that of people up there to take care of an air base. And our Coast Guard icebreaker would go up there to ward off the ice while the ships came in to refuel and resupply Thule, Greenland. And it was just a cold, barren, desolate, you know, you wonder how people end up being a mess. Just put them someplace lonely for a while. That was really something. And so very cold, but we went up there during the summertime, which made the sun stay up all night. And even if you went outside at 3 in the morning, it was sun was up. It was freaky. And on the way up there, we stopped in St. John's, Nova Scotia, and on the way back, we stopped in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And both are beautiful places. And the nice thing was when we were on our way home, we stopped in Halifax, Nova Scotia. We picked up 300 pounds of fresh lobster and 300 pounds of already steamed, ready-to-eat lobster. Well, of course, that night we took the 300 pounds and we all got a lobster for dinner. Oh, that was good. And at the same time, of course, we'd been out for almost 60 days, a little over 2 months, as a matter of fact, on this trip going up north, 60 days away from home, or more than 60 days away from home. And we only had a week before we would get home when we left Halifax, Nova Scotia. And so we had the lobster right there in port, but we put the fresh ones that came in lobster boxes right into the refrigerator downstairs on the boat. And of course, there was hundreds of them. And so then we had lobster all you could eat that night. And then the next day we had a regular meal, regular 2 meals. And by then we had left Halifax and we were on our way back to Wilmington, North Carolina. yeah, out on the Atlantic Ocean. And of course, Halifax is above Maine, and you're coming down the coast south from there. And we were, at that time, we had caught some beautiful fish, wolffish, and halibut, and some other things. And we were eating all that stuff. It was just great seafood up there, cod. But on the way home, it was time to clean up the boat. We had a week to get everything ready to get back in port. And of course, there's nothing else to do but clean and watch the ocean and all that stuff. So we went ahead and we're getting the boat clean. So then that night after we had left port, the second day, we decided to go ahead and have lobster again. The fresh ones, and we brought the boxes of lobster up to the galley. We made the steam kettles, and we had everything going. We were throwing lobsters in there. We must have been a couple of hundred of them. And of course, there's 269 people on board, so they probably had at least 250 lobster. And we each got one, and everybody cracked and ate lobster, the whole night. And just until it was all gone. And we just stuffed ourselves. And I think by that time we were pretty much like, I'd had enough lobster. we were like lobstered out. And so the next day we were, off the coast of Connecticut, coming down the coast, cleaning everything out. Now, when we left port, before this over 60-day trip, the freezers were full of food. Well, now the freezers were empty. We'd pretty much eaten up everything. And so the freezers were empty, and they had just turned them off so we could get in there, pull up the grates, clean up all the trash, make sure it's ready, because as soon as you get back in port, within a few days, they're going to start reloading the ship for the next trip. So this is your chance to get everything clean. So then the next day, so that would be like if we had the second load of lobster on Tuesday night. Wednesday, we were cleaning the freezers and getting everything done. Well, then Thursday, we started cleaning the refrigerators. And pulling out all the crates, all the racks. There was lettuce and broken this and messed up that, and it was a mess. That's what happens out at sea. Things fall around and get broken. And so then we pulled these one boxes out of the way, and there was a lobster. Now, it had been 2 days since we got lobstered out, so we were happy to see him. We were ready for lobster again, but I don't know what happened. He got out of a box. He got out of that lobster box, and he snuck away, and he was like, yes, I have escaped. And so he was happy, backed up in the corner, and we moved those boxes, and there he was. He was ready to fight. I honestly thought about it. One of us, or at least nowadays, I think somebody probably would have thrown him back. I would think they would have pulled the little rubber bands off his claws and just thrown him over the side and said, good on you, good to you. But no, we split him 4 ways. One person took 2 claws, one person took the claw, one person took, he was good because we were over. It was good. So, but anyway, we were real proud of him and thought that was really funny to find one lobster left over. And of course, we finished cleaning and got the boat ready for getting back in port. So that's my lobster story. And of course, when you're up that far and you get to see the northern lights, you get to see the beauty. We stopped in a place called Sandestrom, and the ice water was rolling down off the mountain from the glaciers. And it was ice cold, and you could just scoop it up and drink it. And it just felt so good. It was like the best water we'd ever had. And of course, we were eating the fresh fish and all that was up there. We had a lot of interesting things. We met a few Eskimo people who were up there around in that area. Their boats were, carved, and they were very colorful. And then it was back to good old USA and American food. And everybody wanted to hit the Burger King when they got back in town, back in the 80s. Much bigger deal back then than it is now. And that was a good trip there. And then, of course, after that, we went to the South Pole. And I might save that story for another time. Hi, Marilyn. But anyway, when I was up there in that, the thing I wanted to tell you about the fresh water being so good was that the stone, it was just, hundreds of yards and yards and yards of solid, smooth stone. And the stone was etched like little racetracks, like little train tracks. And it was just, you could look down at this stone, and somehow your mind was able to slow down and realize the glacier that used to be there. Who knows, hundreds of feet thick, what kind of glacier was there? But at one time, you could run your fingers down the grooves of the stone and know that you're standing where there was hundreds of feet of glacier above your head, who knows how many years before, etching the stone, making its mark on the earth. And that was a beautiful piece of history to feel, to drink that fresh water and to see that etched stone from glaciers who, glaciers are very patient. I think the only time glaciers get upset is when they get out on the ocean and they turn over in their beds and show their blue sides and experience something like that. I've seen glaciers turn over. I've been on a ship, my icebreaker that I was on, called the North Wind. It was actually originally commissioned in World War II as a U-boat hunter up in the Arctic. This Northwind was now owned by the Coast Guard. And when we would come through, bump an iceberg, or we would break some ice, it would cause the ice to lose its equilibrium, and it would flip. And I'll tell you, ice that was formed down in the ocean is still fresh water, but it is the most beautiful, clear blue ice. It seems like only when the air gets into it, the little tiny air bubbles, and the snow melts. When the snow melts and turns to ice on top, that's the very cloudy white ice. But the ice that's underneath that was formed from the ocean, underneath, like from the ocean itself, freezing out of the salt water, but not salty. The salt water doesn't freeze. That was always blue and clear and beautiful, and a sight to behold. I remember one time being as a cook. The cooks, we work from like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on the boat, and then from 6 p.m. till 6 p.m. a.m. the next morning, we've got nothing else to do but sleep. And so they would let you stand watch or be helpful around the boat. And I used to go stand watch at night. And you get a parka, and you just get up there, and the snow is blowing, and the ocean spray, and it's just wonderful experience. In the last few days before I got out of the Coast Guard, I actually was on a ship that did like 30 knots. And so they were on their way. The last few days I was on, I just got right up on the bow, just like Titanic. Of course, this was 1991, but just like Titanic, I got up on the bow and had the wind in my face and the spray and listening to the cutter cut through the water. Well, it actually inspired a poem that I wrote, because the ship I was on was, the name of it was the Chandeleur, which is named after the Chandeleur Islands off of Louisiana. And if I can find it, I will read it. If I don't find it, then I will recite it from memory. And I'll do that. So we'll just see if we can find it real quick here. Oh, I think I want to tell you that one. Gonna look through some of my poetry. But anyway, a 110 is a 110-foot long Coast Guard cutter. And it is does about 30 knots. And they use them out there in the Caribbean and around for drug interdiction and things like that. And so I got to be on there, and I was the cook. And I had 16-man crew, so I had, I took care of my boys. I was like, oh, here it is. And so 110 It has that red, it's white, and it has a red stripe on it. And they paint the floor gray. And, you know, it's got the radar, and it's got the small boat that, you know, you can lower over the side to go do boardings. And it has the gun on the bow and all that kind of stuff. So, or the GUN, the fun on the bow, and that we need it. And I've got to be careful. And of course, you know, when you're out in the blue of the ocean, and you could drop a penny in the water, and you could see it for 50 feet, 80 feet before it'll finally disappear. It's that clear out there. The oceans are very much alive and clean and beautiful farther offshore. So we were on an interdiction, and we were chasing a runner who had a big old a fast boat, they called him, and he was running from us, and we were chasing him. And I was very motivated by this chase, and we had it on film, and I lost the video, I'm sorry. But I enjoyed filming that, and they used to have these hydrofoils. The Navy had these hydrofoils, which were unfortunately decommissioned about 1993, but they were some of the fastest naval vessels ever made, because they lifted out of the water up onto 3 posts. You know, instead of being a ship on the water, it had these little things that came down and allowed it to come above the water. And you've seen hydrofoil skis, hydrofoil surfboards. Well, imagine a 120-foot boat as a hydrofoil. And it had the official speed of 55 knots, which is about 60 miles an hour. But I wouldn't say that was the fastest it could go. I'm pretty sure it was a little faster than that. And so anyway, we called on it, and it came out of Key West. It was stationed in Key West, and that thing came out of Key West full blast, circled around us, chased down the guy that we were chasing, and went right in front of him and splashed him out and caused him to stop. And then we boarded him and took care of him. But that's what caused me to write this poem. So this is how it goes. Alight with me upon the deck of a 110 far at sea. Nestled in the calmest blue, she awaits command from thee. Just so softly as we stand, she rocks from left to right. Radar turning high above, gray decks, white sides, red stripe. Awake, ye mains, rise from your beds, and roar to the shaft's delight. 2 screws down under, with blades to plunder, the blue they yearn to bite. Gleaming throttles nudge the palm, the velvet nose of 1,000 horses. Charts are ready and lines are drawn. She leaps against the ocean's forces. A half step back, inertia pulls. Hold on as she gains speed. As one we cut the cobalt blue. It's true, she lives in me. So that's my 110 poem. Now, remember I said we were chasing the bad guys, and that poem was called I don't remember. Let's see. A fast boat ignites 2 454s. Now 454, a Black Max 454, is like the biggest inboard outboard engine you could buy at that time, here early 90s, 91. And it's what all the fast boats were using, and very versatile, very hardworking, excellent. And of course it would push a boat up to 70 miles an hour. So, you know, the bad guys would want to use that particular engine. So when we had arrested these people that we got, and we had searched the boat, we lifted up the hood to the engine room, and right in there was 2 Black Max 454. So that's how it got into the poem. It was A fast boat ignites 2 454s and makes for America's coast. Two-fisted flying through corridors and islands and making the most of every direction, avoiding detection, she makes for America's coast. But we've already seen them, and the distance between them and us dwindles with every word. Coming down from great height, a white bird, red stripe. It was a most unusual bird. I was hoping I'd find it. For a head in seas from 4 to 6. Now, a head in seas from 4 to 6, that means the seas, the swell, were 4 to 6 feet high. Now, for a big boat like I was on, we were just, we could break through and cut through every one of those swells. But the small boat that we were chasing, that fast boat with the black maxes, he was hitting everyone and flying in the air and bang, bang, trying to get away. His rooster tail was shooting. He was trying to get away from us so bad. But we were just chudging after him. We were pretty much going as fast, a little faster than he was, maybe about the same speed. He was starting to, he maybe could have got away with us if it hadn't been for the hydrofoil. And it was coming down from great height, a white bird with red stripe, something like that. For on radar, we could see these people that were running from us. So that was a most unusual bird. For a head in seas from 4 to 6, he leaped to make his escape. Our hearts filled with laughter as engines pound after. To break the hand of fate. But I don't know, can't find it anywhere else. Anyway, our hearts filled with laughter as engines pound after. On radar, a beautiful sight. Anyway, I remember his hands would grip the helm to break the hand of fate. But the crosshairs on our bow, and it's like on the bow of a ship, there are handrails that are thick, then there are just cables that you hold on to. And so the cables would be like, the cables would all cross at the front of the ship. They all would come together at the front of the ship. And so if you were standing in the right spot, it would almost look like crosshairs on the scope of the crosshairs would be like on the front end. So it was like, for the cables on our bow act like crosshairs on the scope. Atop the of justice aimed at people running something, you know. Anyway, so that was what I did in the Coast Guard, and a little bit of swimming. We did have a chance several times to save some lives. And that was one of the reasons you train. We used to do something at night called night ops, which was rather exciting. I was the boat launch operator. And we used to practice in darkness because you have to run the controls even if it's pitch black. You cannot have any lights on because then they'll see you coming. So we would have the deck would be pitch black, and we would have to raise the small boat and bring it over to the side and bring it down and then load, and then the guys in the boarding crew would get in the small boat, and then we would launch it. And we would do all this at 30 knots in the dark, out at sea. You know, that was like awesome. Yeah, meatloaf and barbecue ribs. Yeah, I did serve that. I'll tell you a cooking story. So there are certain levers that you have to move. You know, this one's up, this one's down, or this one's up, this one's down, this one's left, this one's right. And then there's left, and then there's extension and draw it out and bring it in. And so you're having to do all these things in the dark at 30 miles an hour on the ocean, and then people are getting in the boat, and then you slow down maybe to 20 knots or so to drop the boat in the water and unhook it. And then they take off at full speed, and you go back up to full speed. Oh, that was the days. Yeah, that was fun. We had a great time doing that. And it was, but the thing is, you spend months just training and nothing really exciting at all happening. And then all of a sudden, absolute thrill, absolute terror. And then after that, back to normal. And I think that's where PTSD kind of comes in, where you spend so much time being ready for something, and you had a heightened sense of adrenaline and a heightened sense of important work to do, and then all of a sudden you're in a new environment after you get out of the military. For me, it was like coming out of an incubator. I had been isolated in the military for 13 years, and to come out of that and get back into the real world was difficult. I hadn't been in only but 13 years, and so it wasn't too bad, but it took me a little while to get acclimated back to the speed of public life compared to the speed of military life. Because, we always had refresher training, gun training, flooding training. They would literally take you to this training boat and sink it. They would stand you on the deck, and then they would say, "Hit Bravo, your boat is sinking." And then everybody would just scramble down into this, fake boat, and water would be pouring in from pipes and from holes in the wall, and you had to patch it all up before there was a mark on the wall that if the water got up to that mark, you lost. You failed the training. And so we had a great, exciting time, always trying to beat the water coming up to that line. And as a matter of fact, there's a thing called Buttercup in Naval Air Force in Norfolk. And the Buttercup was the sinking boat that everybody trained on. And I think at the time we had almost the record for how fast we could have plugged it up and stopped the flooding. And so that was, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that, the Buttercup, but that was a lot of fun. And then, of course, there was fire training. One of the reasons that I feel like the military are people that can handle stress is that when you train around fire and you train to fight fires on a shipboard or wherever you're at, you're not quite so immediately petrified, frozen by fire. You understand how fire works. You know how it's going, where it's going, and how fast. And you know that you've got time to get things done, to get people out. You're just not as afraid of it, because you've been trained to control it. So that was, something I enjoyed doing. I trained in Gitmo over in Cuba. I trained in Jacksonville, Florida. I trained in Norfolk, Virginia. And that is the point of life, is training. In the same, you might think, oh, you don't do that. Oh, yes, you do, because you do training every time you put on your seatbelt. You're trained to put on your seatbelt. You are trained to set your alarm at night, to get up in the morning. There is a lot of training, and there's a lot of things like that. And you'll find that the more that you train, the more you can function when everyone else is in a panic. And that's very necessary in my situation. My wife, she does not function well in any kind of high stress situation, so she can shut down. And she always said, you know how to get out of everything. I'm always looking for a way out. I know where the doors are. I know where the exits are. I know, which one's going to work, what's going to do, I'm just always thinking like that. That's part of the heightened sense of training in the Coast Guard. And so, it's always good. If you got kids, do a fire drill in your house. Do a fire drill. Just do a fire drill in your house. And, when you can do it is if you burn something in the kitchen. If something on the stove cooks in the kitchen, then and there's smoke coming up and everything, that's pretty realistic. Now, of course, it's just a pot smoking on the stove. But hey, yell fire, say everybody out, and see what happens. Go ahead, do that. There's people that have fire escapes in their house, inside a toy box that you just open the window and lift the toy box lid and the ladder comes out and goes down the side of the wall. You know, there's a lot of things you can do like that. I would train your kids. Take a moment to do a fire drill. You know, block their door and say, okay, now what are you going to do? The hallway is full of, you know, you can't come out this way. The fire's right here. Where are you going? What are you going to do? Get them to think. Because if you will line up their brain cells to think that if that day ever comes, even if they're at someone else's house, their training will kick in. It'll save their life. The same, you know, that's why they have CPR training. That's why they have, you know, fire training at schools. Every school has a fire drill just to teach the kids, you know, how to get up, how to get out, and to function, because, you know, your body panics, but your brain doesn't. Your brain is like, I want to live. But your body is like freaked out. It doesn't know what to do, left, right, up, down. And so you just get yourself used to those kind of things. So, you know, did a lot of training, just used to all those kind of things. And then when Joy and I had animal, we were raising puppies and things like that, and situations, very stressful situations would come up where the sickness or something would go wrong, or, you know, anything else like that. It never bothered me. I was able to handle it, you know, and it just bothered her. So I was very helpful for her when it came to that. And then, of course, you know, cooking. I took care of my boys. I was on you know, the icebreaker. I was a cook and night baker, and on the small ships, taking care of my boys either in Oxnard, California, or in Miami, Florida. You know, took care of my crew, and I was like, you know, I was the happiest person doing all that. I really liked cooking. I felt kind of motherly, and did all my grocery shopping. Loved to grocery shop, especially with somebody else's money. You know, because my grocery bill would be $1,200. I would come out of the grocery store with like 3 full carts, and so it was enjoyable. And so one of the things the Coast Guard did for me on these small ships is that they don't have a lot of room on a ship for you know, a big dishwasher or anything else like that. You had to wash your own dishes. You had the, you know, the double or triple sink to wash your own dishes. But for safety's sake, they gave me a sanitizer. And a sanitizer looks just like a dishwasher, except that it doesn't have those pull-out shelves or anything to put dishes on. They knew that if they did that, you would turn it into a dishwasher, so they didn't give you those. What they did was they gave you these racks. And once you washed all of your dishes and you got all the junk off, you put them in the sanitizer. And this was the best for safety, for foodborne illness and things like that, for a crew, that when you've got a lot of people together and you're feeding a lot of people, you just have to be so careful when it comes to, you know, foodborne illness and things. And so they gave me a sanitizer. And that thing would sit there and steam at 180 degrees. And anything you put in there, it would sanitize it. And the cycle only ran like a minute. Because it was the other reason is that dishwashers use a lot of water. Well, you don't have a lot of water on a ship out at sea, so you use the same water to getting everything washed, and then you didn't have to rinse it. You just scrubbed everything, cleaned everything right in the wash water. Then you took it from the wash water into the sanitizer, because the sanitizer wasn't set up for a whole bunch of food or grease or anything else like that to clean that stuff off. It was strictly for rinsing it down to the high temperature to sanitize your stuff. The reason I'm telling you this is because one day it was 11 o'clock and chow time is noon, and I opened up the refrigerator. I opened up the stove, the oven, to see how the fish is cooking. You know, I mean, you know, the stuff I had for lunch. There was nothing in there. I was like, oh my goodness, I have forgotten to get the halibut out. So quickly I scramble and I get the little sheet pan out and I pull out the 14 halibuts and lay them out on the sheet pan. I'm thinking I can't stick them in the oven. I have to thaw them out first. Well, there's my my sanitizer over there, just steaming a little curly steam, and I thought, oh, that's what I'll do. I'll put the halibut in the sanitizer and close the door. Won't turn it on. I'll just leave it in there. It's 180 degrees in there, you know. I won't turn it on. I'll just put the fish in there, And then, so then I did that. So then I put the fish in the sanitizer to thaw it out. I went over and I turned my oven on to 350 degrees. So then got busy with other things, and because it was seafood day, so it was fish and it was steak and it was macaroni and cheese and all the stuff you do for a fish day. And because I would do a big meal on Fridays, because usually the boys are leaving for the weekend and all that kind of stuff. So this is import, not out at sea. And so it comes around, it's 5 minutes to noon now. And I open up the oven to get my fish out. No fish. It's not in there. Oh no. I look over at the sanitizer and it's just calmly steaming away, steaming away. I open up the sanitizer and there is the most beautiful poached fish you've ever seen. It had the little scum on top, in which I took the tray out and I put some paprika and some parsley on it. Put it over by the stove. I was like, opened up the grain. Yep, they're cooked. And I put everything out. I put the halibut out. Oh, you should have heard them. Wow, Cookie, that was the best fish. I've never had poached fish like that before. That was so good and moist, and oh man, that was awesome. So I started using my dishwasher to cook with. And funny thing is, it was like the next week, it was burrito day. And I'm telling you what, I make these big 16-inch tortillas, kind of size burrito. And I use, I would make regular beef, and I would make this ranch. I would take chicken, and I would take ranch dressing, and I would take sour cream and all these things and put it in a burrito, or I'd make a beef one, you know, with all the fixings and the refried beans and all that kind of stuff. And I would stick them in the oven and they would come out and it'd be all right. But I had the idea, I made all 16 burritos and I put them on a sheet pan and I did the same thing. I put them in the sanitizer at about 11:15. And at noontime, I opened up that sanitizer and there were the hottest, moistest, most awesome burritos. I pulled those out. The guys were just like, wow, how did you do this? You know, how did you make such a burrito? I'm like, yep. And so after that, on the menu, here's what the menu said the next week. Yep, dishwasher burritos. We're having dishwasher burritos on Thursday. Oh, yeah! Everybody really liked that. Another thing they did for me, because I was single, and they always wanted to make the cook happy. When I had arrived at the ship, they actually threw me into the worst situation. I was at a land station up in Michigan, and I'd been on several ships, and so I got a land station. So after I left the land station, I had to go back to sea. Well, he said, where do you want to go? And I said, well, it's going to be my last duty station before I get out. So I'd like to go to Miami. I'd like to go someplace warm. I'd like to go down there. So they had the Chandelure, the 110-footer. And the fun thing was, it wasn't in port. It was actually in the Bahamas. And he said, we really have an issue there. The cook is really not interested in doing his job. Having a lot of complaints and things like that. Now, he was a good military man, but he just didn't have the desire to be a cook. He wanted to be he wanted to be up on the bridge. He wanted to be looking at the charts, and he wanted to be a navigator, and he just didn't want to be a cook. And I don't fault him for that. You know, you kind of pick your rate, pick your fate, and if you decide you don't like that, then you can switch it, you know, and it takes time to switch and all that. But he just, he just wasn't that happy as a cook. Well, of course, and he said, things are this and that, and I want you to go down there and fix that. And I did not know how bad it was. So this was back in the day when you could travel in uniform. So I traveled in uniform, took a flight out of the Bahamas. Some of my stuff came with me. Some of it went to Miami to pick up when they came back in port. There was no point in taking all of my stuff to the ship. So I just took one suitcase to the ship, and I came walking down the dock, and I saw the ship, sitting there at the dock in Bahamas, and there was a guy up on the bridge. He was standing watch. He's like, "Is that the new cook? The new cook's here. The new cook's here." And this is how bad it was before I got there. When I came down, so you go in the ship, watertight door, then there's a ladder right there that goes down to something called the mess deck, and the mess deck is where everybody eats. I go, so this engineer guy in some overalls, he looked like he'd been down working in the bilge. He comes out and says, "Hey, this way, come on in." And so I turn, he goes down the ladder first, and then I go down into the kitchen next. And he goes, "New cook's here." And I get down to the ladder. Everybody's sitting at the table. There's a dozen people sitting at the mess deck tables eating their lunch. And they all began to clap and go, "Yay!" I thought that was for me. In a way, I was like, I've never had such a welcome on a ship before. But they were clapping that I was there. And I turned around and looked at the guy that had brought me in. I guess he was an engineer or something like that. And I was like, wow, I guess things haven't been, too good. And it turned out that guy that was standing there, he was the cook. he just didn't want to be a cook. So I'd never gotten an ovation for just showing up before. And that made me feel really good. So they were trying to, make anything I wanted, whatever you need, cook, we'll do it for you. And they came to me and they said, we still got an extra $1,200 in the budget. We need to spend it or they'll take it back. Do you need anything? And I said, yeah, I'd like to have a mixer. I just wanted a little tabletop mixer, 5-quart, so I could make a loaf of bread or something like that, a loaf of bread or two, and make some bread, make some biscuits, make, sweet rolls and things like that. So they said, sure, we'll do that. We'll do that. So this is just a small boat, right? Guess what shows up? It was about 3.5 feet tall. This huge mixer showed up. It was too big to bolt to the countertop. You couldn't open the cabinets behind it. And it couldn't put it anywhere else in the ship. So I ended up having to take it out of the closet. It was like, oh my goodness, it weighed 100 pounds. Take it out of the closet, put it up on the countertop whenever I could, and lash it down so that it wouldn't move. And they were so happy because I started making homemade bread, and I made this thing called sweet cinnamon raisin bread. And it was the sweet dough recipe, and you'd roll it out to about a half inch, maybe a little 5/8, 1/4 inch thick, and then you would butter it. And then you would put cinnamon on it. Then you would put raisins on it. And then you would roll it up. And guess where I put it? You guessed it. It went in the sanitizer. And so it would sit in the sanitizer and rise. Now, of course, I knew to turn the sanitizer off. Then 180 degrees is too much to raise dough. But if I put it in there and then turn the sanitizer off, it would stay warm long enough to rise. Oh, so here you are. Beautiful night. Way out in the Caribbean, passing the islands, out past Bimini, out past the Bahamas. You're way out there. It's midnight. The moon is shining off the emerald coat of the ocean. And all of a sudden, you smell cinnamon bread cooking. Just imagine, the boat's rocking a little bit. You smell cinnamon bread cooking, and you're like, man, I'm glad I bought that mixer. I tell you, I just had a great time doing that and taking care of my boys. And so anyway, I ended up getting out of the Coast Guard in '91. I'm glad I did. I had and I was older ADD. And so then if I hadn't gotten out in 91, I wouldn't have met my Joy in 92 and marry her in 93 and be here today talking to you. So it was awesome. Yeah. I want to say that I kind of grew up in not a military family, but my brother was in the Air Force. And, always watched a lot of World War II movies and things like that. Of a generation of, watching John Wayne on the Sands of Iwo Jima. And, but after this experience, I had an experience, a born again experience. And after that, I sort of saw things differently with the military. I was an angry person. I just knew that, and so I knew that I couldn't be part of the Army or the Marines or anything else like that, because I knew that once I got involved with that, I probably would be ruined. It would be like, giving a domesticated wolf blood. He'd go wild if he tasted the blood. So it was best for me not to be involved with that. And so when the Coast Guard wanted to put my hand and put me on boarding parties and assault training and weapons training and how to beat people up and things like that to get control of the situation, I just nope. If I can't just be a cook, I don't want to be here. It's best for me. By then I had understood PTSD, and I just knew that it was best that I did not go there. I don't think I could come back. And when a couple of times I was in some training situations where I did get kind of out of control and felt no pain, and they say that's not a good thing. So I stayed away from that. And so I got out and just stayed with the cooking for a while. But there's not a lot of money back then with cooking. And at least, to support myself was okay. But if I was going to have a future, I had to either own something and let somebody else cook or start a different career. And that's when I became a painter. And then that was that paid really well. That paid the bills. So I wrote a poem called Death Glorified. A fighter plane as it streaks the sky, a bomber's vapor as it soars up high, are works of art I don't deny, but only by death are they glorified. Going down for all it's worth, a fighter plane impacts the earth. Its metal enfolds the pilot like a coffin. A bomber's tail is blown clean away. Control is lost, it starts to sway. The loss of plane, not life, we count too often. So proud of these machines that fly, we forget in them that men did die. By paint and polish, we surely try to brighten the museum of death glorified. There once was a war that was finally won through death on the cross by God's only Son. Though we sing weekly his praise to the Holy One, have we lost track of the man and the cross he was on? So often forgotten, these things that aren't seen. We know his birth and his death, but what's in between? The stable and Mary, the cross and the stone. These are symbols like family, but the man stands alone. The cross is a lighthouse. Each person looks on it. Some gold or some wood, some with Jesus still on it. Through tributes and honor, show we death glorified. But it's not in the cross or the grave that bring the lost to his side. Neither history nor photos nor lectures provide. It's you telling them it's for they that he died. It brings a new meaning to the price that was paid for the gaining of freedom with lives that were laid. The stories within you are the best place to start, to get Christ off the cross and into their heart. That's very true. We all have an understanding of, there's always a sacrifice. It takes a sacrifice to gain ground, especially in the areas of good and evil. It takes a sacrifice. And, that's the main story of the world. That's the main story of life. It's the greatest story ever told, of one man's sacrifice for others. We hear many war heroes have done that. Many men who carry the Congressional Medal of Honor around their neck, whether they're alive or in Arlington, are great heroes. They're great sacrifice. And, we think, oh, well, it's, these men sacrificed is what paid, their death paid for the victory of this war. How many have to die to pay for this war? And you see, that's really, really not what it's all about, because it isn't the death of a soldier that counts the strength of the army. It is the decision of the soldier to give his life. That courage, that decision, it's the one that then, hear the supersonic snap of something flying by his head, and still, and see spiderwebs emerge on the glass of his Humvee, and yet still get out and fight with his comrades. That's courage. I've done some things, that people would call courage, but really it was just, fear caught by surprise. It wasn't really courage. Courage is when you make a decision to go into something that you know what's going on, not when it's just a surprise. And that's what the Army, that's what the Marines, that's what they do. They have a courage to enter into the fight that's already happening all around them, and be able to function. And that's not easy to do, especially to come back, into civilian life after functioning that high of a stress situation. A lot of the rest of life can seem boring. I spent much of my life seeking more adrenaline rush, more things. I would even do things that I knew were wrong just for the adrenaline rush that would come. And that was part of my problem, was I had an adrenaline addiction. And the adrenaline addiction was feeding on the PTSD and causing sin in my life just for the excitement of doing wrong. Well, and she wants to keep her ears warm, and she's staying warm and cozy at home. That I took this on, and I was going to have a warm fire right here, but it ended up just keeping my vest on. We bought these are those vests that warm up. Very nice. Recommend that. And they just use your regular backup phone batteries, with the USB port and all that. So recommend that. So yeah, but I honor the military, what they've done, the sacrifices they've made, and the reinitializing of a civilian life afterward is difficult. I spent a lot of time, trying to get back into that same feeling of exhilaration, and it doesn't happen. And what it is, especially fellas, anybody that's watching me that's been in high situations and you miss that, or you never want to do it again, but yet there's something inside you, is that I'm not telling you to schedule it, but I am saying, there will be times, relax and enjoy your life, and when those times come, enjoy them. Instead of thinking, well, that's the only time I'm happy, only time I'm happy, I used to have to ride roller coasters like crazy. Now it's like, I'll get to it. It'll be fun, but I don't have to do that all the time just to have that thrill in order to feel alive, to feel my emotions or anything else like that. So this is something that I wrote about listening. and I was trying to imagine that I'm not hearing God. I am not experiencing what I want. I'm not really getting where I want to go. And this is God talking to me, because he's trying to get through to me, but I'm just not listening. So this is a devotional I wrote called Listening. God said, "You can't hear my voice when you're depressed or anxious, doubtful, fearful, unstable. You are too self-occupied to see me or hear me. You cannot hear my voice when you are experiencing self-imposed weaknesses, such as fatigue or illness caused by the lack of proper eating and exercise. The only voice you hear is guilt, and this is far from communion with me and my plans for you." I understand that. It's like, as I read this, I remember writing this, and I was feeling very guilty. And God was trying to tell me I can't hear him if I'm racking myself with guilt. And he says, "You cannot hear my voice when you're a late riser, when you sleep in, for my voice is most clearly heard in the morning. Individuals who learn to hear me at this time can often hear me in the midst of their busy day." So he was saying, during the day, I'm saying, "God, where are you?" Well, I really haven't trained my ear to listen. Now, if I hear his voice in the morning and I listen to him in the morning, I'm more likely to hear him again later that day. "You cannot hear my voice when you are debating your obedience." "When you are entertaining temptations in your heart, I will not communicate with you." Oh, boy. "You cannot hear me when you are contemplating disobedience." Oh, my goodness. "When you are entertaining temptation in your heart." Oh, boy. Boy. That's so true. That's so true. Sometimes we're so busy thinking about something we want to do, we can't hear God say, "Oh, don't. You cannot hear my voice when you are watching television, though you vainly think you can." God said, "You must also listen to the people and concentrate on what they are saying. Hear more of what they are speaking. Listen to their desires, hurts, and attitude. Respond to people with my voice. I am present to give you wisdom. I can teach you to say and distinguish between, to say the right thing and distinguish between the natural mind and my mind. I can give you discernment in your thought life if you let me lead you. So seek me with your whole heart. Let me walk with you in the innermost chamber of your heart. Lean on me for everything you need. Do not rely on human resources alone. Consult me often and listen. I'm a God who speaks. I am active and alive, and I hear, and I need you to hear what I'm saying. Draw close to me, humble your ears, and discipline them to my voice." Boy, that was good. I haven't read that for years. So that pile of other poems and everything, some other day. I want to say I love you, and Jesus loves you more. And thank you for being with me tonight. I don't know if there's anything else. Yep. Joy says thank you. Yes, she's doing better. Joy's watching her ears and doing all that. Hey, Smoky Mountain Man. So for all of you that got to enjoy this evening with me, thank you for being with me. And have a wonderful day, wonderful night. I bless you. And believe in God for every good thing to come your way. You have favor and wisdom and understanding, and the world looks kindly upon you, and uh, you are able to function in everything you do. I pray for the functions of the human bodies that are listening to me, that you will comply to your Creator's original plan in Jesus' name. I bless those with the liver issues, the kidney issues, the heart issues, the bones and nerve issues, the issues. Be healed in Jesus' name. And good night, good night, good night.